शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते। ताप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत् कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Okay, so we all know that Gita Jayanti is coming up, and Gita Jayanti is one of the most important festivals for the ISKCON movement. It is in the month of December that this Jayanti happens, Gita Jayanti. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, and Srila Prabhupada, he started the book marathon in this month of December. So basically this month is called Shastra Dan. So Shastra Dan means you give away the Shastras in this month, especially Bhagavad Gita, because as Srila Prabhupada said, that is the basis. So, there are 3 books that he recommended for a person to read in his lifetime: Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita in the same order. So Bhagavad Gita is the basic. We have to read that book. Now, it does not only mean that you do charity, dan. What is the point of doing a dan about a thing you know nothing about? So it is very, very important to read. That is a charity you can give to yourself, the charity of reading, because you give your time. So 2 things are very, very important: to give it out to others and to read it to yourself. Imagine if you read a book, say you give out a book, any book of Srila Prabhupada for that matter. Say if you give out Bhagavad Gita to any of your friends or your family, your relatives, your teachers, your anybody, neighbors, and if they ask you what is in the book and you have no clue, now that won't be nice, right? So to distribute a book, it is most important to know what is in the book. So it is very, very important to understand this book. With this festive time going on, Christmas coming up, New Year coming up, generally we give out books. We give out gifts. So whatever gift you want to give to anybody, your friends, family, teachers, neighbors, whoever, just add Bhagavad Gita to it. So that will be very, very nice. You can give Bhagavad Gita only, or you can give Bhagavad Gita additionally. So, generally the word Jayanti, it is used for someone's birthday. But this word is not meant for mortal beings. Most people, they don't know about Gita Jayanti is that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and this is not the first time. So when we say Gita Jayanti, that is not for this planet. We're talking about this planet. Bhagavad Gita was spoken not for the first time when Krishna spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That was not the first time. We know he himself says in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 4, verse number 1, Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam vivasvam manave prahur manar ikshvake abravit. So this itself, he says that he spoke this to Vivasvan for the first time, the sun god. So we can understand from this that this is not the first time Bhagavad Gita was spoken. The translation says, the Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Then the very next verse, 4.2, again he's saying that this knowledge is which he imparted to King Ikshvaku through parampara or disciplic succession, it got gradually lost. So he's saying this supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. This he writes in 4.2. So this message of Bhagavad Gita clearly shows that it is Bhagavad Gita is eternally present, and Lord Krishna, he delivers it in its original form as and when it needs to be revived. So this is not the first time that Bhagavad Gita is being spoken, and long time back, as we read from the verses 4.1 and 4.2, that it exists, eternally it exists. Now there's another verse which tells us the importance of reading this book, and if you can pull up verse number 68 from chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, it will tell us. I'm going to read it out. If you can pull it out, very nice. Ya idam paramam ghuyam madbhaktesh abhidasyati bhaktim mai param garkritva mameva shyati samshaya. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Generally, it is advised that Bhagavad Gita be discussed amongst the devotees only, for those who are not devotees will understand neither Krishna nor Bhagavad Gita. Those who do not accept Krishna as he is and Bhagavad Gita as it is should not try to explain Bhagavad Gita whimsically and become offenders. Bhagavad Gita should be explained to persons who are ready to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a subject matter for the devotees only and not for philosophical speculators. Anyone, however, who tries sincerely to present Bhagavad Gita as it is will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. As a result of such pure devotion, he is sure to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, as this verse says, the words Guyam, and he says here that asamshayam. So Guyam means it is a confidential secret. Now, the question may arise that Bhagavad Gita is distributed now for this particular Gita Jayanti, the goal is 2.2 millions, to be distributed. Now, if the book is being distributed in such big numbers, how is it confidential? What does Krishna mean when he's saying it is Guyam? The point is that unless this knowledge is given out in disciplic succession as it is to a person who is absorbed in devotional service, the person is not going to understand. That is why even though Bhagavad Gita is given out in such big numbers, not everybody, the book has the potency in itself. So it is very, very important to have the book in your house, but there is no guarantee that you'll understand. To understand Bhagavad Gita, you need proper guidance. You need to understand it under the direction of a spiritual master. Only then can you understand Bhagavad Gita. But the book has so much potency and so much power because these are the words of Sri Krishna himself. So having a book in the house itself is very auspicious. So everybody should have Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure all of you have Bhagavad Gita in your house. So now you have to make sure that everybody this is the time of the year, should have Bhagavad Gita in their house. So you can, there are many ways to contribute. You can yourself go door-to-door distribution, give out the book, or you can, give it out as gifts, or you can sponsor the books, however, whatever works for individual. But yes, this is the time, because these are the words of Sri Krishna himself. So it is very, very powerful, very, very potent. And so everybody, whoever you feel, or wish well for, should definitely. And being devotees, that's what Srila Prabhupada taught us, that you have to be compassionate. What about human beings, even to ants, every living entity, plants, everybody. So in that regard, whoever you meet, whoever you know, should have Bhagavad Gita. That should be your vow for this Gita Jayanti. So anyway, so first point was that it is Guyam. So why is it Guyam? When it is given out so openly in public, anybody can pick up the book and read. But reading is not a way of understanding only. You need to have that intelligence, which is passed on through the parampara under the guidance of the spiritual master. Only then you can understand. Because otherwise, if you see, there have been so many editions of Bhagavad Gita. When Srila Prabhupada was writing Bhagavad Gita as it is, there were 300 editions anyway. So what was the need of one more? This question was asked to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada, he explained it very nicely, that very clearly also, that all these people who wrote so many editions about Bhagavad Gita, most of them were concocted. They were not. That is, Srila Prabhupada's book itself says Bhagavad Gita. So the knowledge is passed down from the disciplic succession as it is. There is no concoction in it. Srila Prabhupada did not add his own words to it. In fact, there was a time when Srila Prabhupada was asked this question, and Srila Prabhupada was very, he was talking to the book distributors, and he was saying that they need to read out the books also if they're giving out the books. And then he said he himself used to read his books. And then one of the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada that, how come you read your own books, and why do you read your own books? You're the one who's writing them. So Srila Prabhupada told that devotee that I read my own big books, because when I am writing the books, it's not me who's writing, it's Sri Krishna who comes and who dictates, and I just pen it down. So every time when I read my own books, I learn a lot. So such a powerful statement. So we can very well understand, there in Battle of Kurukshetra, Sri Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And now, through Srila Prabhupada, again, he is giving us this knowledge in a language that we can understand. So this is the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then in this, another very important reason for us to read Bhagavad Gita and give out Bhagavad Gita and give out this knowledge to other people is because, as the verse says, at the end, he will come back to me. There is no doubt. So asamshaya means without doubt. There is no sanshaya. There is no doubt that a person who gives out this knowledge and himself also reads, at the end is going to go back to Godhead. What more can we ask for? This is what we are here for anyway. So now I will tell you a story from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which will tell us how important this knowledge is. Bhagavad Gita and all the entire, the Shastras basically, and why should we give out this knowledge. So now what happened was, Srila Jiva Goswami, at that time when Mahaprabhu left and Nityanand Prabhu left. So Srila Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they were all writing these scriptures in Vrindavan. In fact, at that time, when this Leela happened, only Srila Jiva Goswami was there, and he wrote out so many. We know that he's the scholar, So he wrote so many books. Now what happened was, at that time there were three of his not, I won't say his his not Diksha disciples, but Shiksha disciples. So there were three of these devotees: Shyamananda Pandit, Srinivas Acharya, and Narottam Das Thakur. Shyamananda Pandit was a disciple of Hriday Chaitanya, and Srinivas was Jiva Goswami, and Narottam Das Thakur was Loknath Goswami. So So what happened was Jiva Goswami wanted to spread this knowledge far and wide. Now, all the scholars were back there in, and in those days, the Vaishnavas, the Gauriaman people, all the scholars, they were back there in Bengal and Orissa. And at that time, Jiva Goswami was in Vrindavan. And so were these three of his Shiksha disciples. They were there too. So Srila Jiva Goswami, he wanted to, spread this knowledge to begin with, because he knew that all the scholars were back there in Bengal and Orissa. So that's the place where he wanted to start. Now, all this knowledge was there, and he wanted to send this knowledge across to Bengal and Orissa, and he chose these three, students, or three best students, we would say, of Srila Jiva Goswami, because they were Shiksha disciples, to take this knowledge across. Now, Jiva Goswami had a very rich merchant disciple, and he wanted to engage him in the service. And so that merchant, he gave him a supply of huge spacious cart where he could put all these manuscripts and send it across. Now, generally, there are in a bullock cart, that bullock cart was the means of commute in those days, and generally a bullock cart has 2 bulls. Now, this bullock cart had 4 strong bulls, and there were 10 armed guards with the bullock cart. Now, the manuscripts, the original work, by Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and Jiva Goswami, among others, they were carefully placed. All these manuscripts were placed very carefully in this large wooden chest. And, because this person was very, very rich who was engaged in this service, so everything was very perfect, tip-top, So it was very well bolted. They had a wax cloth over it, and it was taken very, very carefully. So they had 10 security men for it. Then these 3 students of Srila Jiva Goswami, they were taking, and 2 people were riding the bull, and there were 4 bulls, all with well prepared security arrangements, everything. Now, they had to go across Vrindavan to, the entire of Madhya Pradesh. And finally, while traveling from Vrindavan across Madhya Pradesh, they reached a place called Vishnupur. Okay. Now, in that Vishnupur, in that place, there was a king by the name of Bhirambir. Okay. Now, this king Bhirambir, he was a dacoit king. So he was actually a king, but what he would do, that he would have his people steal things from tourists, and based on that, of passers-by or whoever he found very interesting, or because the news would spread when people would go across, rich people would travel. So this king had his own spies who were dacoits, and who would, at the time, middle of the night, steal the valuables from these people and give it to the king. But nobody knew that. This was his inner secret. And that's how he used to run his kingdom. So, the news spread that this rich bullock cart with trunks of the wooden trunks, well decorated, are coming from Vrindavan. And so the spies, they knew that this is happening, but they were very aware and smart. So they never used to steal till the people came through their land. They passed through their land. So now this king, he was aware. His spies had made him aware that something like this is going to happen. And he was very excited, because as we discussed, that the merchant who made the arrangements for all these manuscripts to be carried was a very rich merchant, and the arrangements were also perfect. So these people who were keeping an eye waited till they came across their area. So this caravan basically held special interest for these thieves, because the kings had astrologers, who had prophesied that the cart contained a very precious treasure. No, indeed, that this was the only treasure, we can say. So now these band of dacoits, they were waiting, and they were like 200 in number, and now they were assuming that this cart is filled with gems, and they didn't know that what actually the cart had was more valuable than these gems and gold. Now, so they, in the dark of the night, when these 10 guards and the 3 students, they were taking rest, they, without waking up, because they were experts, that's what their job was. So without creating a chaos and confusion, they actually managed to steal the manuscripts. Okay. Now, when they woke up, all these 3 students, when they woke up, they saw that the priceless treasure was lost. It was not there, and they could not contain their tears. And then Srinivas, who was he was the senior most in the party, and he then advised the other two, Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda. He said that, you proceed with their mission to bringing the message of 6 Goswamis to various parts of Bengal and Orissa. And he said that now it is my duty to revive the manuscripts. So he said, before he did anything, he actually wrote a letter to Jiva Goswami, and he told him all that had happened. Now, back there in the king's palace, his servants, they brought him that valuable chest which had all these manuscripts, and the king was super duper excited, and he was like, okay, let's see what is in it. Now, he was also obviously expecting the most precious gems. This king, Birambir, he dropped everything else, and he feverishly unwrapped his latest prize. Now, because he had heard so many prophecies about it, so he could secretly imagine, he was not able to imagine also that what was waiting for him. So when he removed the cloth that was covering, and he opened the trunk, to reveal the manuscripts, he got a shock of his life, and he was like, where is the priceless treasure? And now when he lifted the topmost manuscript in disbelief, he saw the signature Sri Rupa Goswami written on a palm leaf, right? Then he examined further that maybe it's dug inside deep, and he saw the beautiful exposition of Vaishnava philosophy by Srila Rupa Goswami, and he, just by looking at those manuscripts, he had a change of heart. Something changed deep within. So he basically, according to some acharyas, it is said that at that very moment, just by looking at those manuscripts and the sign of Srila Rupa Goswami on the palm leaf, he attained the love of Krishna at that very moment. Okay. But then it took time for that love to be revealed. So what happened was, so then he was not able to decide if he was disappointed or he was happy, because the feeling was such. So then he actually, packed everything back in the chest, and he retired for the evening. And he was but deep down, because that love had awakened, he knew that he had committed a grave sin, and he was not able to think much. So he retired for that evening. Now, when he slept, he had a very unusual dream. What he saw in the dream was a very beautiful and effulgent person. His body was full of divine energy, and with a very loving smile, that person spoke to him. Do not worry. Soon I will come to Vishnupur, and we shall meet. I will retrieve my manuscripts, and you will be relieved of all sinful reactions. At that time, your joy will be boundless. Know for certain that you are my eternal servant, life after life, and I am your eternal well-wisher. So he had this in the dream. And the next morning when he woke up, and he started his life anew, he was now just anxious. He didn't tell anything to anybody. He was just anxiously waiting for the day when this mysterious dream would come true. Now, meanwhile, Srinivasacharya, he made his way outskirts to Vishnupur, where he asked Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamanand Pandit to go the way they had planned. And he said, in the meanwhile, I'm going to get the manuscripts, because he took the responsibility for that. So then at that time, he was he was on the outskirts of Vishnupur, and there he met a Brahmana. The name of the Brahmana was Shri Krishna Ballabh. Okay. So these two people, these two pandits, they became very good friends. Then Krishna, that pandit, Krishna Ballabh, he graciously invited Srinivas to be a guest in his home. Gradually, he realized that Srinivas was not an ordinary person. He had, he was in a very exalted position. And when he realized that, he surrendered unto him to become his pupil. Now, in this due course of time, Krishna Ballabh, he had mentioned that, the king of Vishnupur, who was this Biram, the Raja we were talking about, he said that, Birambir, the king, he holds Bhagavatam Katha. And he wanted to go and attend with Srinivasacharya. So Srinivasacharya agreed. He said, okay, because, that's what he liked to hear, Krishna Katha. So he thought, let's go and hear. Now, when he went there, the Bhagavatam recitation was going on. This Bhagavatam recitation was done by the priest of the king by the name of Vyas Acharya. And he was a court pandit, and he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, but Srinivasacharya was unimpressed. He didn't find it interesting at all. So he tolerated. He had no choice. And then again, so this continued. Every day he would go, and he didn't find anything interesting, but he would sit there out of respect. Now, for 2 weeks, this was going on. And then when he came to 10th canto, that's when Srinivasacharya could not take it anymore. And he said, sir, you do not follow the text, nor are your commentaries in line with Sridhar Swami or the other standard exponents of Bhagavad philosophy. Vyasacharya, he first listened to Srinivas's comments, but he ignored his advice. But then king, who was sitting next, he was sitting there, he overheard to what he had to say, Srinivasacharya, and he told Vyasacharya that looks like he has something to say. So Vyasacharya said, well, in that case, offer him the Vyasasana and let us see what he has to say. And then he actually, so actually before that, Srinivasacharya had already because this Ras Leela pastime was going on, and he had already commented on Vyasacharya that how can you comment on such confidential subjects without referring to authoritative statements of Sridhar Swami. So you're basically unfamiliar with your own work. Now Vyasacharya had become very angry, and then when the king told him that looks like he has something to offer, Vyasacharya became all the more angry, and he said, okay, let him take the seat, let him take the Vyasasana, and let him say what he wants to. Now when he started to speak, so we can very well imagine what Srinivasacharya had to offer. Not only was that understandable, but people were in so much bliss, they were, so happy, and they had never ever heard Bhagavatam in such, in such an eloquent way. It was so very attractive to them. And then Srinivasacharya explained the Bhagavatam philosophy, and it was very well accepted by everyone. Vyasacharya was very, very disturbed, and he left. So then the king, he encouraged him to go on. And for several hours, Srinivasacharya spoke. And when he finished, the whole assembly applauded, and they were so ecstatic with his love, seeing his love for Krishna. And Vyasacharya, obviously, by that time, it was just too much for him. But then because he understood the philosophy, he was also actually happy towards the end. Now, even though he was defeated, now king, he was very moved, and he spoke to Srinivas Acharya, and he said that no one has ever come to this kingdom and shared so much love and scholarship in the way you have. So he said, please tell me what is your name and where do you come from? So Srinivas Acharya replied to him that my name is Srinivas and I am a native of this country, Bengal, and I've come here to see your magnificent court and to relish the Bhagavatam. So the king, then he gave him, invited him, he gave him the best of the accommodations in his palace and asked him to live there as long as he liked. Now, then later in the evening, what happened? The king asked Srinivas Acharya to dine with him. But Srinivas Acharya, he took prasadam just once a day. So he said, no, I don't eat in the night. And then he invited him again and he said, okay, come for something, just fruits and some milk like that. So Birambir, he encouraged him to have some fruit and then he agreed. He said, okay. Not because he didn't want, he had given him the accommodation and place to live and everything. So he didn't want to disrespect or offend his distinguished host. So now, when Srinivas Acharya was eating the fruit, the king sat at his side like a humble servant. He had never felt like that about anyone. And he was so effulgent, Srinivas Acharya was so effulgent, he understood that it was the same person who came in his dream and he had considered him to be his guru and he wanted to render some menial service to him. So then that night Birambir heard Srinivas repeating the name of Krishna through the wall, and because his room was right next to the guest room, it seemed that Srinivas Acharya did not sleep, and he said that he's a genuine. So this is the king. What is he's thinking in his mind, that this is a genuine saint. He's just absorbed in thinking about the names of the god, and this was with this very idea, his confirmation of him being the same effulgent person he had dreamt of. He slept very peacefully, listening to Srinivas Acharya's blissful voice in the next room. Then on the next day, what happened was, again, Srinivas Acharya spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, and this time, people came one by one and they bowed, to Srinivas Acharya's feet and hoping that he would accept them as his disciples. Later, the king also submitted himself to Srinivas Acharya, and he said that you're the real king, and I'm not worthy to be in your presence, but I want to serve you. Please tell me, what can I do for you? Then Srinivas Acharya opened up. He said, you know what? I actually come from a holy city of Vrindavan with a mission from Gopal Bhatt Goswami and Jiva Goswami. I was to bring the original literature to Bengal, but this treasure was unfortunately robbed within your kingdom. He said, if I cannot retrieve these books, I would prefer to lose my life. Can you help me get them back? The remorseful king, he basically started crying profusely. He said, a poor worm, I'm a poor worm, I'm lost, I'm hopeless in this land of birth and death. He said, my own men have, done this for years and years under my order, and they're the ones who came up to your caravan, and they are the ones who stole that greatest treasure in the universe, and I cannot express how sorry I am. And then he said, but there is a positive side to all this. It's only because all this happened did I meet you. Was I able to surrender unto you? Was I able to confess of my sins? And he said that I am not going to do any of this now after associating with you. So then Srinivas Acharya, he laughingly, he assured him that this was all not necessary. And he said that, in fact, he was so very happy to get those manuscripts back, because Srinivas Acharya, the king showed him all those manuscripts, and Srinivas Acharya then forgave the king and all the sins that he had committed. But then he did ask him not to commit any more sins. And the king, obviously, he was more than ready to comply. So this is how important it is. We can understand from this story that these manuscripts, these original books, are so very important. And these three acharyas, what did they not go through to have these books, to deliver these books safe and sound from Bengal to Vrindavan. So basically, the king ended up becoming a disciple. Not only the king, the king's wife, the king's son, they all ended up being the disciples of Srinivas Acharya. And then basically, he initiated them. There was a big ceremony that happened, and then he recited the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in the king's ear. And that's how Srinivas Acharya initiated him. And he gave him the name Hari Charan Das. So basically, then he wrote a letter to Jiva Goswami telling him about all this. Then the wife of the king, Sulakshana, and the prince, Dhari Hambir, they also became Srinivas Acharya's surrendered servants. Basically, this is how. So this is the story of how the original manuscripts were lost and then were retrieved, and all these three disciples, these students, sincere students of Srila Jiva Goswami, had to go through so much to get these books back. So that is, now what exactly was in those manuscripts, in those books? It was all about the knowledge of Sri Krishna. It was all Krishna Katha, right? So coming back to our verse 1868, where it says that, one who gives this knowledge sincerely, and so as the verse says that it is a very secret knowledge. For the one who explains this supreme secret to devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. So from this we can understand that who explained this supreme secret was Srinivas Acharya to the king. So at the end, the king, he was guaranteed the devotional service, and he was accepted as a disciple by such an Acharya despite his background. He was a dacoit king, if you think about it. But the mercy of this book is such, these books, all these books, the point is that what is the content of those manuscripts? Krishna Katha. What is the content about these Bhagavad Gita and all these books that Srila Prabhupada has given us? Krishna Katha. Bhagavad Gita is the song of the Lord, is the book spoken by the Lord, and Bhagavatam is a book about the Lord. So Hari Katha is everywhere. So this knowledge is to be delivered in such a profound way, and everyone who does that, the one who delivers it and the one who receives it, if the one who delivers it does it sincerely, and the one who receives it also receives it sincerely, then back to God it is confirmed. So the point is that all these manuscripts, which were all about Krishna Katha, these acharyas, they went through so much just to deliver, just so that this could be delivered from Vrindavan to Bengal and Orissa. So they went through so much. And this verse also talks about giving the knowledge, which is confidential, and then one who does it goes back to Krishna. It is very, very important. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada himself, in a letter to Bhagwan Das in Vrindavan on November 5th, 1972, he wrote, "Anyway, print books, distribute profusely, and that will be the best preaching work. What will your 3 minutes preaching do? But if they buy one book, it may turn their life. So make this your important task to print our books and distribute widely. And that will please my Guru Maharaj. Never mind, it takes little time to make progress. Our process is slow, but sure. And we are confident that if we continue in this way, we shall go one day back to home, back to Godhead. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, we know what all troubles Srila Prabhupada went through in getting these books printed. He always used to say, my Guru Maharaj said that if you have any money left, print books. So books are the basis. We know that from Srila Prabhupada. And I hope and I sincerely pray that all of you contribute somehow this Gita Jayanti, either giving out these books as gifts, reading them, however it works for you. So at this note, I would like to end. If anybody has any questions, then we can take from there. Anybody has anything to say?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much, Mataji, for a very wonderful session. So, Mataji, can we go for question answer session?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Rishabh, please unmute yourself. Yes, Rishabh, go ahead, beta. Rishabh, we can't hear you. Your voice is not. What was the king's name, Mataji? His question is, what was the king's name?
Virambi.
You got it, Rishabh?
I can send you the name if you want in the text, okay?
Okay, Mataji. Manhar, please unmute yourself.
My question is why did the king steal? Like, was he really poor?
No, he was not poor. He became rich in a wrong way. That was, there are some people who are like that. But there was a big transformation in his life. He was a dacoit king. And that's how his transformation happened through Srinivas Acharya's presence.
Okay. So got it, Manhar, beta?
Yeah.
Okay. Satvik.
Thank
Unmute
you.
yourself. Satvik.
Thank you.
Satvik, can you unmute yourself, beta?
Yeah.
Okay. How's your Mataji? Satvik is new, Mataji.
Welcome, Satvik. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you?
I'm good.
Yes, tell me. I serve you.
What did you say?
Tell me, do you have any questions?
Oh, I didn't have questions. I just wanted to tell you I was new.
Okay, you're most welcome. Please come again.
Okay. If anybody have any question, please raise your hand. So Mataji, I think everybody clear.
Sure, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for a very, very wonderful session. And it's a very right time to listen the glories of Gita Jayanti. Very nice topic, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. It's real.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, हर ग्रेस नयनमंजरी माता जी की जय,
Guru Maharaj. Thank you.
गुरु महाराज की जय। थैंक यू माता जी, थैंक यू सो मच। हरि बोल कृष्णा माता जी।
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, beta.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा के
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा।